So yes, big welcome, and so glad to see so many of you showing up today for the launch of WorkCycle, which offers programs around menstrual and menopausal wellbeing for workplaces. My name's Thea O'Connor, and I'm a friend and colleague of WorkCycle, and I'm your MC for today. And we've also got the WorkCycle team here, who I'll introduce later, but let's just have a little wave for now. So Libby Chow, would you like to give us a wave? Wonderful. And Vanessa Chapple, can we have a little wave from you? Great. And Sarah Miller, awesome. And Libby Chow, I think we've had a little wave from you as well. Fantastic. And is Jane Bennett there as well? Yes. Great. And just to kick us off, I'd like to ask Sarah to do an acknowledgement of country.
Yes, Wamanjika. Welcome to you all. I am coming to you from my home on Bunwarang country, and it is an honour to acknowledge country, to acknowledge the ancestors, the elders, the Begurk, the women, and the Gulani, the men, who have lived on and cared for country for tens of thousands of years. So please take a moment to honour the land on which you now sit, and in doing so, take this opportunity to connect, feel your feet on the ground, on earth, on country, and breathe in the air of country. It's the season here now, Harep, and spring is ending and we're moving into summer, Balato Nawinth, which means plenty of sun. And this season in the Bunwarang Kulin calendar is identified by the living landscape, by the movement of the stars, the turt in the sky, by the flowering of the coast tea tree and the black wattle, and by the return of the snapper into Nam, into the bay. And we acknowledge this seasonality and this cyclicity that exists in the living landscape, in our own bodies, and is in WorkCycle. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And what I'm going to do now is just create a little bit of a context, I guess, or set the scene for WorkCycle before we hear from the program supporters and creators. So I'm the founder of Menopause at Work Asia Pacific. And so I've been tracking, I guess, awareness of menopause in workplaces since about late 2018. And that's where, through my own experience of talking with clients and my own experience of going through menopause, but also through interviewing many Australian women through a confidential interview series, I was able to characterise the standout 3 S's with which women described the experience of going through menopause in the workplace. And those 3 S's were silence. This isn't something we talk about. Not just silence, but also secrecy, feeling a need to actively hide the experience. And thirdly, stigma, either fear of being stigmatised or actually experiencing gendered ageism. And so it became very clear that menopause was the missing life stage on workplace wellbeing agendas. And it became clear that, well, someone needed to do something about this. And that's what prompted me to develop services in this space. And then when I looked around, I saw that the Victorian Women's Trust was already onto it, and the year prior had been trialling its policy on menstrual and menopausal wellbeing. And to my knowledge, that was the first in Australia. But I can tell you, just 4 years ago, it was tough going, trying to get workplaces to even talk to me about this topic. I have quite a few funny anecdotes, but I won't go into them today. But I'm sure that you've realised and recognised that just in the last 2 years, or 18 months in particular, there's been an enormous tipping point in awareness about menopause in, public spaces, but also in workplace settings. And we've had, high-profile women across the world starting to speak up about it, whether that was Oprah or Michelle Obama, or even some of our own politicians. And in the workplaces that I work with, I know there have also been some brave women out there speaking up solo for the first time, not knowing what kind of reception that they're going to get, but being deeply committed to doing so because they don't want the women coming after them to go through this life stage with such lack of support and ignorance. And so I reckon menopause, and let's add menstruation in there as well, is going through something of a bit of a Me Too movement. And I imagine that there are people on the line today who've got their own stories as well. And then in the broader context, we've had things like a parliamentary roundtable on menopause. Just last week, a Senate inquiry into menopause was announced. And within that kind of context, and also within workplaces, there's now more focus on managing psychosocial risks. Finally, this life stage is making it into workplace agendas, which is great. And what I found really interesting is that there's been something about menopause which has helped open the door into workplaces in a way that menstruation never managed to achieve. But a good thing that's happening that I'm noticing is that sometimes a workplace might start with a menopause policy and then realise, well, why aren't we adding menstruation, and build it out from that point. So the ground is definitely shifting. And within that context, more service providers are springing up, which is great because we all have our different flavour and style. And one of the few of the aspects of WorkCycle that I really appreciate for its own flavour includes that this work that you're going to hear about today, it is steeped in deep expertise in women's health, women's body, and the reproductive cycle and how that affects people. This program is kind of like the life's work in some ways of many of the facilitators. It's very holistic. It includes the medical perspective, but also acknowledges the importance of culture and how much the cultural context in which we go through these life stages, how much that impacts on well-being. And thirdly, at its foundation is the importance of listening to people, listening to women's experience, and having their stories really respected and heard and respected for their diversity. So that's just giving a little bit of a taste of the flavour of WorkCycle. But now I want to hand over to Jane Bennett, one of the creators of this program, for a bit more background. So there's a bit more background on Jane. Jane, she's a social worker with over 42 years experience. Isn't it great to claim our expertise? 42 years as a facilitator, counsellor, menstrual educator, including in natural fertility management. She launched Celebration Day for Girls in 2000 and Fathers Celebrating Daughters in 2004. And now she's got a team of trainers internationally for Celebrating Day for Girls Day in 29 different countries. That's huge. And then 5 years ago, Jane founded the Chalice Foundation, which is a not-for-profit social enterprise dedicated to promoting menstrual culture and education. Jane's written quite a few books. So look, here we go. A Blessing, Not a Curse, and Girltopia, A World of Real Conversations for Real Girls. She's the co-author of About Bloody Time, The Menstrual Revolution We Had to Have. Isn't that a brilliant title? I love it. Ourselves at Work, Creating Positive Menstrual Culture in Your Workplace, The Complete Guide to Optimum Conception, The Natural Fertility Management Kits for Contraception, and The Pill, Are You Sure It's For You? Phew. And I remember saying to Jane once, you've written a lot of books. And she said, yes, I've got a lot to say. And so to create, here's your time, Jane. Please do tell us a little bit more about WorkCycle.
Thank you, Thea, and thank you for that gorgeous introduction. I'm delighted to be joining you all from Jajawarong country in central Victoria. So as Thea was talking about, I've been working in menstrual education for several decades and have become deeply involved in this emerging and I'm very pleased to say blossoming field at this time. Since 2013, I've worked closely with Mary Crooks and the Victorian Women's Trust, initially by diving deeply into a survey of nearly 3,500 women and girls and their self-described experiences of menstruation and menopause. One thing that really struck me when we were poring over all these thousands of surveys is the extraordinary diversity of experiences, the compelling stories, some of which were truly devastating and really went home with me and stayed with me, some very inspirational. And all of those stories, all of those voices were hugely important. And one of the challenges for us in really distilling and working through all this information and all these amazing experiences in these surveys was how to distill that into a really useful voice that would really honour the work that had gone in. So one of a number of themes, and I won't be talking about it all today, of course, that emerged from the survey was a number was around difficulties and the sheer invisibility associated with experiences of menstruation and menopause at work, as Thea spoke about too. Women reported feeling undermined by unwelcome and unfunny jokes, negative stereotypes, pervasive silence, isolation and ignorance around these experiences, and judgment when difficulties were expressed or consideration requested. So very often women felt as if they had to lie about the cause when their menstrual or menopausal symptoms were such that they couldn't work, or not at least effectively. Women reported that they were leaving work and workplaces, and often jobs that they loved, purely because there was no understanding, no provision, and certainly no support or flexibility to help them care for themselves at certain times, whether for an hour, a day, or a month, and then be able to return refreshed and fully able to fulfill their role again. So after some dedicated teamwork and a great deal of deep reflection and several all-nighters, these efforts led to the writing and publication in 2019 of About Bloody Time, the Menstrual Revolution We Have to Have, as you introduced in your introduction. And I know many of you are familiar with this book and the cover, but I just like to put it on screen because it's so beautiful. Just as a little aside, there was data from the Australian Institute of Superannuation Trustees fairly recently that revealed that even if 10% of women retired early because of menopausal symptoms, this would lead across Australia to a loss of earnings and super of more than $17 billion. Now, we know that the effects and impacts of the challenge of menopause at work is not just about the dollars, whether it's personal or national. But of course, there's many implications and there's many sort of downstream effects of this loss of earnings. So in this book, in About Bloody Time, we dove deep into the menstrual taboo and its many devastating impacts and came up with a short list of powerful calls to action, the first of which won't surprise you. So, number one, menstrual policy as standard practice in all Australian workplaces. And I'll leave it to you to go back to your book or to get a copy to really look at our whole analysis of that particular call to action. But most gratifyingly, in the years since About Bloody Time's publication, we've seen a growing number of workplaces and organisations adapt the Victorian Women's Trust menstruation, menopause, wellbeing policy. Again, thank you, Thea, that mentioned that in her introduction. And there are many organisations that have adapted this to their own work environment, as well as exploring other ways, other practical ways to implement a more friendly workplace for those who menstruate and those who are experiencing menopause. So as inquiries and just people interested to share their experiences poured into the Victorian Women's Trust, at least weekly and very often daily, we felt there was a need for a further work, further research, and toward a guidebook of very practical templates and checklists and case studies. So initially Casimira Melican did the research and writing on this project, and then Mary Crooks and myself completed the writing of this. And this is called Ourselves at Work, Creating Positive Menstrual Culture in Your Workplace, which was published in 2021. This is available on the Victorian Women's Trust website as a PDF and as a hard copy. So if you want to have a look at that guidebook, you're very welcome to go there. During this time, as you can see, there was sort of quite a bit happening between 2019 and 2021. But also during this time, and staying with the theme, Mary and the Victorian Women's Trust also lent their support to, first of all, Circle In, which is an organisation dedicated to caring for working people who have caring responsibilities themselves, to undertake a survey into women's experiences of menopause at work. And this resulted in a groundbreaking report called Driving the Change, Menopause and the Workplace, another 2021 publication. And then secondly, a group called She Listens that you'll be hearing more about shortly. And I know many of you here today are very familiar with She Listens, was supported by the Trust to make a short film called Giving Voice to Menopause, which, with incredible beauty and skillful simplicity, shows the depth and diversity of people's experiences of menopause. This was also launched in 2021. So you can see there's a massive theme here. And all credit to everyone who's been working in such an amazing way in this field. So come early last year, Mary Crooks from the VWT brought myself from the Chalice Foundation, Sarah Miller, Libby Chow and Vanessa Chapple from She Listens together to consider a project to create programs for workplaces, to combine all this work, all this experience, all this data and this beautiful film into neat and eminently useful and culture-changing programs for menstrual education in workplaces and organisations. Of course, as we know, which is why we're here today, we jumped at the chance, and so WorkCycle was conceived. All of this with the generous and visionary support of the Victorian Women's Trust and the Dugdale Trust for Women and Girls. And this created a powerful advocacy and social change through all these programs and resources toward creating greater gender equity through a menstrual revolution, as it says on the cover. So today, as we celebrate together the birth and the launch of WorkCycle, and as a footnote to illustrate the rising tide of awareness, I just want to mention again that this month it was announced that there's a Senate inquiry into menopause and how it affects women. And this is due to be reported on in September next year. So all I can say about that is watch this space. So thank you so much, Thea. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Jane, for giving us that context. It's interesting to see what's been building over quite a number of years. There certainly isn't a flash in the pan for you people at all, is it? No. So you've mentioned the Victorian Women's Trust and the support of them. So we're going to hand over to Mary Crooks now, who's been a big supporter and long-term advocate of menstrual health education and policy, and including WorkCycle. So a bit about Mary. She's had an extensive career in public policy, and in 1996 she became the Executive Director of the Victorian Women's Trust. And recently she's led a national campaign called Together Yes in support of the Yes vote in the recent referendum. And she's also designed and led groundbreaking community engagement initiatives such as the Purple Sage Project and Our Watermark Australia, using kitchen table conversations model. In 2012, Mary was appointed an Officer of the Order of Australia for her services to public policy and advocating for the advancement of women. She specialises in environment and sustainability, philanthropy, social justice and human rights, and women's safety, public policy. So over to you, Mary. And we just need to have the microphone unmuted. We're all a little bit challenged by that today.
There we go. Thanks, Thea. And yes, I'd like to acknowledge country and indicate that I work and live on Wurundjeri land. I guess in paying respects to elders past and present, I would like to take this opportunity to say how much we have to recommit to even protecting these important rituals like welcome and acknowledgement of country, because they are in some quarters in this country post-referendum seen as something that ought to be wound back. And I think now is the time when everybody who voted yes in that historic referendum must commit to the best possible allyship in supporting Indigenous justice and reconciliation across our nation. Positive menstrual culture, you mentioned, Thea. I've been long involved in it. Well, to be honest, I wasn't, because I went through my teenagehood, my adulthood, my birth-giving and my menopause experience fairly ignorant about what was happening to me and my body. It's really only a decade of insight and knowledge and learning that I've had the privilege of taking part in. And I think my experience as a menstrual person and a menopausal woman was pretty typical of an awful lot of people in my society. So when Jane and others came to us way back in 2012, 2013 to try and shake things up a bit, there were even some younger women in our office at the time who sort of giggled a bit, saying, well, goodness me, what's there to be done about menstruation? Like it was almost a little bit of a side issue in people's minds. But what we have been doing across that decade, as Jane said, is working really hard to try and bust this thing open. And as you put it nicely, Thea, the question of silence and secrecy and stigma is what has to be busted open here. So we did, as Jane mentioned, undertake that massive survey of 3,500 people, but also we conducted back then 22 discussion groups across Victoria of all age groups and so on. And the combination of the qualitative and quantitative research was quite stunning. And yes, as Jane said, there was a lot of diversity, but there was also a lot of patterning. And the patterns that emerged were largely around women being fairly ignorant, like myself, about what was happening to me during menopause, not looking after myself, not looking after ourselves properly as we menstruate and as we go through stages like menopause, of our partners and people connected with us not really knowing what was going on either, of feeling stigmatised and ashamed and, oh, heavens above, if any menstrual blood appeared on an item of clothing, I mean, it was just about the end of the world, and secrecy and silence. So, and the lack of support that a lot of women felt in their families, in their relationships, and the secrecy and silence was even such that I've discovered that, women, like everybody online here today, is probably very, very good at having a great bunch of female friends. And it's no accident that women form most of the book clubs around the country. Women love having a natter together and are very, very good at developing intimate friendships with their female friends especially. But what I've found over the last couple of years is testing people is that the stigma has been so great that even women best mates have never really talked to one another in large measure about what was happening to their bodies. So the survey was critical to us launching a decade of work. And I suppose the point is, from that knowledge and action that we gained, it was absolutely a no-brainer to us that we had to start developing a menstrual policy, positive menstrual cultural policy for our little workplace here at the Women's Trust. In other words, when we knew the information, when we had a much sharper understanding of things, and when we understood the oppressive nature of the menstrual taboo, then we had no option in our view. We had to do something about it, and we had to start in our own workplace. And so we did. Our menstrual policy is basically a very simple tripod, if you like, 3 legs to it. One is, if you're at work and you're feeling crappy, then you have permission to find some ways of treatment at work. Fresh air, a walk, a water cooler, a fan, get up from your desk, maybe find a more comfortable place, lie down for a while. If you're feeling crappy in the morning when you're not at paid work, but you think you can actually fulfil your work obligations, then you have permission to work from home and your remote from working from home policy kicks in. But if you're feeling so crappy that you feel you can't be a productive paid worker on that day at least, then we said you have up to 12 days of paid leave a year in which to rest up, not feel the burden of work, of paid work, take care of yourself and come back to work a productive human being the next day. And so we put that in it. Thea's right. It was, I think, we were the first organisation in the country to introduce that kind of menstrual leave. We've been hugely supported in our feedback for it. We've had some backlash, and I say backlash is good. It means you're cutting through. And that led us then to mentor a lot of organisations. We put our menstrual leave template up on our website. It's been one of the most visited pages of our website ever since. There have been something like 7,500 visits just to that page alone since we put the menstrual template up on our site. And then it was with great joy that we were able to publish About Bloody Time. I actually take pride in thinking that I came up with the title of that publication, but Jane and Karen seem to think that they did, so that's now a moot point. But I do like a good title. And to me, About Bloody Time, the menstrual revolution we have to have, is about right. And that has been a superb exercise. And, oh, my God, did Jane and Karen and I have to wrestle stuff to the ground in coming to the point of that publication, because even for women such as ourselves to grapple with the question of what is this menstrual taboo, where the hell has it come from, what sustains it, what are the obstacles in the way to women wrestling with these issues, come and see the patriarchy inherent in the system. Understanding all of this within our societal structures was an enormous conceptual challenge, and we stuck at it like Jack Russell Terriers, actually, with a soft toy in its mouth. But we got there in the end, we think. It was no surprise that we would then try and find a way to support work like WorkCycle, and it was really thrilling to me to be able to bring Jane together with Vanessa and Libby and Sarah to work together. And if that kind of collaboration surely is so important to the way women work, and it's so under attack in a lot of other parts of our society, and we have to be able to hang on to that enormous social change dynamic of coming together and working with one another on these vexed questions. Let me finish up quickly by saying that the revolution we have to have, why? Well, because as a feminist all my life, I say that the nuns and my father made me a feminist. So I've been a feminist since I was a kid. But I actually got to the point where I realised, with this growing knowledge a decade ago, that menstruation and menopause and the stigma and the taboo makes it a feminist issue and makes it one of the big jigsaw pieces in striving for full gender equality in our world. And I would put it to you, we cannot achieve full gender equality while there is any vestige of the menstrual taboo at work, keeping women oppressed, unsure about their bodies, unconfident about their bodies, not looking after themselves, and not being respected for who they are and what their bodies do. So to me, it's a gender equality issue, unequivocally. And for those of you who haven't remembered the history, when Deborah Wardley or Deborah Laurie was the first person in Victoria in the late 1970s to bring a sex discrimination at work case before the new Equal Opportunity Board. And that case was heard by Faye Miles. And the discrimination case was against Reg Ansett, who ran Ansett Airlines at that time. And he refused Deborah Wardley a place to become a pilot with his airline, even though she was outstanding. And in his interview with Faye Miles, the most common reason he gave, or the biggest reason he gave, for her not being able to be a pilot was that she menstruated. And so the fact that she menstruated made Reg Ansett deem her unsuitable for the paid workplace, because we all know, as Reg thought, that she was not only would be moody, but she would be irrational and not to be trusted with a responsible job. Well, Reg Ansett lost the case. She won the case. She opened the way for women in airline careers. But I might add, and I'm sorry to have to say that I think women have lost sight of this, that there was a boycott by women at the time of Ansett Airlines because of their discriminatory stance, and they lost a significant, up to 50%, they reckon, business travel returns because of that boycott. I just think it's a bit of a pity that women have lost sight of the need to perhaps impose those kind of girl-cots, as somebody has called them. Anyhow, I want to finish off by saying I want to read out the last paragraph of page 155 of About Bloody Time in the section Dismantling the Menstrual Taboo. When the whole of society sees women's bodies as dynamic, deserving of respect, and valuable in their own right, we will transform the world we live in. This is absolutely critical to the broader project of achieving full gender equality. Contributing to that process by helping girls and women to see their bodies as powerful and full of potential is open to all of us. Breaking the deadlocks of shame, anxiety, and fear by connecting menstruation to vitality, health, integrity, and dignity. This is what we mean when we talk about revolutionising menstrual culture. The revolution has already begun, and it's about bloody time. So my congratulations to Libby, Sarah, Vanessa, and Jane. Riding the wave the last couple of years, as Thea pointed out, we are riding a wave. This change is not going to be put back in the genie bottle. It's out of the bottle. And now it's about pushing and pushing and pushing and dealing with backlash and actually completing a reform agenda so that in a decade or so, your daughters and gender diverse people all over this country might look back and say, oh, how quaint was that? They used to have a stigma attached to menstruation and menopause. Maybe it might take 2 decades. But what we need are sharply intelligent tools, guides, processes, supports for workplaces to bring the kind of deep wisdom that Jane and Vanessa and Libby and Sarah and the work of people like Thea, we need this kind of deep wisdom in bucketfuls in our workplaces across the nation. And this is the start of a very important and exciting next chapter. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mary. And thank you for laying the foundation, for doing all of that groundwork that is allowing this revolution to happen that we can now all be part of. Thank you so much, Mary. So we're going to now dive in and hear a little bit more about the WorkCycle programs themselves. And I'm just going to introduce the co-creators one by one, and they've each got a little bit to share. So I'm going to hand over to Vanessa Chapple shortly and just a little bit about her background. So she is one of the co-founders of WorkCycle, and she works as a facilitator, a performing art director, and also an artist researcher, educator and community engagement practitioner. And she is an embodied voice teacher. To me, that sounds so fascinating. And helping people speak up with more ease. How relevant is that to women in the workplace? And her creative works, they range from solo works inspired by personal stories to large-scale community performance projects. And she's passionate about work, which gives voice to the lived experience of women. And in 2020, she worked with her colleagues who are here today to create the short film, Giving Voice to Menopause. And she's also, on top of all of that, doing her PhD at Creative Agency Lab, RMIT. And she's researching somatics and the ecologies of listening within socially engaged practice. So, wow, that's also fascinating and very relevant to the WorkCycle program. Vanessa, can you tell us a little bit more?
Oh, thanks, Thea. And thank you very much, Mary, for your words. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to know that there's all these people who have come to celebrate with us. I'm just going to say a little bit about the programs to you and then pass over to Libby. Our aim has been to create a deliverable package of programs and resources to support visible, respectful and sustainable menstrual and menopausal culture in the workplace for everyone. So WorkCycle has really been designed for all sorts of workplaces. We wanted to challenge the assumption that physical and cultural workplace environments are gender neutral. The experience of menstruation and menopause impacts women in the workplace at different periods of their life. And we have created the programs and they acknowledge the social, physical and emotional aspect of menstruation and menopause. And they provide scaffolding for building support, awareness and visibility in the workplace. And I just want to emphasise again that this is for all genders. So the programs are for everybody, and we were really looking forward to particularly having more men in the room for these programs, because the wonderful thing about the conversations that can happen and this awareness and empathy that can be built when all of us come together to support each other in our wellbeing needs. So that we believe, WorkCycle, the team, as we've come together in a work environment that supports menstrual and menopausal wellbeing and can enhance the capacity of all staff to be fully present and empowered and empathetic. So they're for all genders and generations, so across the workplace, for all ages. And, some of the conversations when we were doing the pilots was just great to hear people talking about how the programs, they were taking information back into their families to talk about back to their mothers and daughters, to sons. I've got 2 sons, and they've become much more aware of this field because of me working in it and being able to be more articulate in the space. So the programs support and acknowledge women's health and wellbeing experience and needs in a society which has inequitable resourcing for research and tending to women's health. And I think it's very important we sort of really land in that for a moment, that this inequitable resourcing about women's health. And it's great to be working in a space to work as an activist in this space to address this. The design of the programs is such that the mode and the platform of delivery, so how we've created them, is accessible and simple. They're informative and they lead people to conversation and further resources suited to their individual and workplace needs. They have been informed by our belief that wellbeing is significantly enhanced when the experience of the menstrual cycle and menopause are framed proactively, positively, and practically. Positive menstrual culture can profoundly impact gender equity in the workplace, as Mary was speaking about. We were also motivated to share our understanding of the menstrual cycle and menopause as a natural, life-affirming and positive, even when also challenging. And just linking back to, I'd like to acknowledge country at this moment. I'm on Wurundjeri country as I speak to you, really appreciating the cycles of life and our bodied experiences as, that we're in a cyclical animal world, and our menstrual and menopausal experiences can be viewed from that lens, and for us to find these dynamic shifts in the way that we are in the world, and now actually acknowledging our need for rest as human beings and our different energies at different times of our cycles. So we really want to have that in our, which is hence the name WorkCycle. I thought that was very clever at the time of when it came up. So the programs implemented, I'll just turn to the implementation. They can meet workplace policy requirements such as gender equity, safe workplaces and wellbeing policy. They are suitable for local and state government departments, large institutions, the education sector, the corporate sector, many who are implementing wellbeing policies at the moment, community health centres, arts institutions, arts and culture, neighbourhood houses, not-for-profits. So the way that we've created them has been that they can be used in diverse workplaces as a first step in educating and offering links to resources. Our experience as women has made it obvious that menstruation and menopause impact psychosocial behaviour and experience and are key factors in the experience of wellbeing. Our work cycle programs lay a pattern to destigmatise the life cycles of women's body and offering language and awareness to all and links to resources and suggestions for accommodations in the workplace. And just dittoing what's been said by Thea and Mary, we acknowledge this cultural change takes time, and WorkCycle's really been designed as this first place of conversation so that the stigma can be dropped and we can actually start having conversations. And we believe that's where the support begins to happen for people, as well as being able to link into services that are around and different ways of approaching the cycling body and then the menopausal body. So I hope that's given you a bit of a taste, and I'd just like to pass back to Thea, who will introduce Libby. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks very much, Vanessa. And so Libby, I think, is going to give you a bit of a tour through the website and a bit of a background on Libby. So she's one of the co-founders of WorkCycle and also one of the creators of Giving Voice to Menopause. And she's got a background in media and filmmaking, which started out at The Age, but then she worked in corporate and community organisations. And then more recently, her work has been focused on health and cultural change. And that's through her video company called Video B. And Libby actually made really good use of the 2020 Melbourne lockdown, and in which she initiated a series of Zoom events on perimenopause, getting some therapists in, but also, probably most importantly, creating a space for women to share their experiences and concerns and challenges around this life stage. So thanks, Libby. Over to you. Can you give us a little bit of a tour of the website?
Thank you, Thea. Thank you, everybody. And I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm living, working, playing, dancing, creating on Wurundjeri country. I'm very close to the Merri Creek, and I really appreciate having a moment to think about the country that we're on. Thank you, Sarah, for that earlier. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to take you through the website. So hopefully everyone can see that now. And if you want to get onto this website post the event, in the chat window we have the website address. And we also have our email address there. So if you have any burning questions, you can also email us there. So as we have heard, WorkCycle offers 3 valuable programs for menstrual and menopausal wellbeing. We have a beautiful logo here by Bennett. We love the logo. And when we were designing this website, we were very conscious of making it very elegant and clear and to the point, so that you could, as a viewer, find exactly what you needed. So we have a contact us button here. You can just go straight into emailing us any questions. So I'm going to take you down to the programs. We have 3 programs that we offer. The first 2 are menstrual wellbeing at work and menopause wellbeing at work, are 60 minutes each. The third one, menopause conversations at work, is a little longer. It's 75 minutes because we also include the film and a facilitated conversation session. At the moment, we are offering both menstrual wellbeing and menopause wellbeing in person and also online. So they're the options for those 2. For the menopause conversations at work, we're just going to keep that to the in-person facilitated sessions. Once you've, we're just going to go down to our menstrual wellbeing page. So you can have a look at that while I just talk a bit more about the pragmatics of delivery. So once you've booked in with us, a facilitator will come to your workplace or your organisation and take your managers, staff, or community members. We've had libraries that have held these events for their community through a very carefully crafted presentation in which we address why menstruation and menopause are workplace issues. We provide valuable information on the definition of terms relating to these often hidden experiences, and we address the challenges that many women face and offer simple, inexpensive supports. We present an inclusive program in which we acknowledge there are varied experiences and gender identity differences. We also preface our program by saying we do refer to female hormones and predominantly women's bodies. Now I'm just going to take you down to the next one. Menopause wellbeing at work. So I'm going to continue to just give you a bit of an overview. We also will provide clear pointers on how to have comfortable conversations between staff and managers and how a menstrual and menopause policy can benefit your workplace culture. We finish with a curated list of resources and some time to reflect on the information shared. Each facilitator brings with them hard copy books and resources for people to browse after the session if time allows. And some organisations that we've worked with in the pilots have also included a morning tea that they provide, time for people to mill around and discuss what they've just heard. So I think that's a really lovely way that you can integrate conversation into these two sessions. The Menopause Conversations at Work program is slightly different in that we offer some of the above information, but the main focus is the 25-minute film. This film features 8 diverse women who generously share their intimate and at times comedic and often profound experiences and questions around this transition. This, we've witnessed, has a really powerful effect on opening up the space for sharing experiences in a conversation workshop that follows. It's going to take you up to the testimonials so you can have a quick look at them. So overall, we're aiming to provoke conversation, offer a range of easy supports that organisations can apply straight away if they wish, and supply resources that can help promote an inclusive and equitable workplace culture. So again, if you want, have a look in the chat. You can go to the website yourself and have a look and make a booking, maybe. I'm going to pass you back to Thea, and she will then... Oh, no, I'm going to pass you to Thea and then Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Libby, for giving us that little bit of a walkthrough. And yes, now I'd like to hear finally just a little bit from Sarah Miller, who's also one of the co-creators of WorkCycle and also the film Giving Voice to Menopause, which I have to say, which is part of the conversation offering, is a real gem and it's a real point of difference, I think. So Sarah is a menstrual, menopause and movement educator, and she runs menstrual, menopause and drum making workshops. And she also co-teaches a year-long program called the 4 Seasons Journey, which allows women to really map their rites of passages, including birth, menarche, and their own birthing experience and menopause. In 2010, Sarah founded Embodiments Dance, which is a somatic movement and dance school for women to explore and enrich their relationships with their moving bodies. I think I want to sign up for all these facilitators' other programs. They sound great. Just enrich their relationships with their bodies, their menstrual cycle, life seasons, and the body of Earth. And she's also got a master's in environmental science. Thanks, Sarah, for sharing a little bit more.
Thank you, Thea. So I am going to briefly talk about our facilitators. So Libby, could you share the screen again, just the picture of, there you go, the facilitators for our program. So as you can see, we have a wonderful team of presenters who have a breadth and depth of experience in menstrual and menopausal wellness and in facilitation, in storytelling and in listening. And our facilitators are based in Melbourne, rural Victoria, regional New South Wales, northern New South Wales, and in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So we are able to offer our programs face-to-face really across the eastern states of Australia and in New Zealand. And as Libby was saying, we have online access to the program. So wherever you are in the country, and to any overseas guests, hello international guests in the audience, you can access the WorkCycle offerings online also, which is fantastic. And you've heard so much about our beautifully crafted programs, and we're really delighted that they are ready to roll, and know that you will be the show will be presented by one of our engaging, knowledgeable facilitators, really helping you and your organisation to create a positive menstrual and menopausal culture in the workplace. So book a session. We do that through the website. Everything is organised centrally. So as Libby said, the website and or email is how you get in touch with us, and we are really excited to be able to launch this program, this suite of programs, a couple of years in the making, and really, really timely. And so we look forward to hearing from you. And that's about all I want to say. Get in touch. Thank you, Thea.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So, everyone, I think that's a wrap. And I think we can officially now say that WorkCycle is launched. Woohoo. And I want you all to go to your reaction buttons on your bottom of your Zoom page and let's send it off to the world with any little icon that you think would be appropriate. So, yes, we hope this program will get out there and make real change to real women. Please do get in touch through the web link that I think will be being shared in the chat box at any moment.